The opinions and views expressed in the following presentation do not necessarily reflect those of GCR Progressive Internet Radio Management, staff, or our affiliates.
Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
Welcome to Mo Banshee's Lair, Visionary Talk Radio on GCR Progressive Internet Radio. Fear rocking your world. And welcome to Mo Banshee's Lair, Visionary Talk Radio on GCR Internet Radio. We have got a rocking show for you tonight. We have Helen Benziger on, or Benziger. I have to correct that if I have to, but she is our guest, and she is a direct descendant of Molly Tobin Brown, who was the daughter of Irish immigrants and known better as the Unsinkable Molly Brown, after the Unsinkable Molly Brown, play and musical and all. But she preferred to be called Margaret. And tonight's music is going to be music I think Margaret would have listened to and liked. She was a very progressive woman. She liked music. She liked fine things. Let me see to make sure that everybody's okay. And I have 3 songs all ready for tonight, and one is the St. Louis Blues by W.C. Handy, and you'll remember that song Walking Through Memphis, where he says, W.C. Handy, won't you shine down on me? And that's who he's talking about. W.C. Handy was considered the godfather, the creator of jazz and blues. And then that was 1914, so Margaret would have listened to this and probably maybe played it on her phonograph. And in 1919, she ran for the Senate, and one of the songs that came out that year was Meditation by French composer Jules Monet. And then I picked from 1923, which is still in her lifetime, Who's Sorry Now? It was a popular song with music written by Ted Snyder and lyrics by Burt Kalmore and Harry Ruby, and they wrote a lot of the Marx Brothers music, Animal Crackers and such. It was published in 1923, and it's sung by Marian Harris. So all the music tonight is something that I think that Margaret would have listened to, and I'm really excited about the show tonight. Everybody knows how it goes. First, let me welcome everybody in the chat. God bless you wherever you are. I hope that you are safe. Mother Nature has been handing everybody their keisters in a sling. We on the East Coast have just had rain to the point now where trees are just falling over. And today a woman in, I think, Central Park in New York, which is about 40 miles from me, a branch with the wind fell on a big tree and hit her. And she is all right. She has a concussion, but she obviously did not expect this to happen. And it's just really scary when you think about this happening. You'll hear a little bit of noise from our guest's phone, but that's okay. She's there. She's breathing. She's okay. So we're going to bring her on in a minute. I do have a little bit of crazy but news. They spent money for this, evidently. They had to spend money to find this out, but 1 out of 3 designated drivers' blood count alcohol levels were measured as they came out of bars, and they've been drinking. And close to 1 in 5 were legally drunk. I don't know why they had to spend money for this. I could have told them that. This is what happens when a bunch of people go to a bar. They think, well, I'll be the designated driver. I'll have a couple of drinks early on, and by the time we leave, it'll all be over. And it's not, because as the evening wears on, then the booze has its time to do its magic. You know, it isn't instantaneous. But evidently, they spent money on this, and everybody's very upset about this, just like the ACLU is suing the government because Edward Snowden, he flew to Hong Kong after announcing Sunday he was the source of the leaks that said that, intercept programs were listening into cell phones and emails and such for terroristic activity. I don't know where everybody's been. Perhaps they've been in dreamland, but I knew about this. I mean, this has been going on since J. Edgar Hoover. They wiretap your phones. I had sons in the Marines. They tap your phones to make sure that nothing's going on that shouldn't be going on, and I applaud that. I don't want another marathon blown up if we can prevent it. Of course, we can't catch everything. I don't understand people being terribly, terribly upset because nobody cares if you're cheating on your wife. She should throw your rear end out, and vice versa. If you're cheating on your husband, same thing. If you're saying things you shouldn't on the phone, stop. Then you won't have a problem with people listening in. Nobody cares what you're doing as long as you're not going to build bombs and bomb Americans. Nobody gives a rat's rear end what you're doing. So this kid is a traitor. He took an oath of to be quiet. He took an oath before he got into that position. They should get his rear end home and hang him by his Buster Browns. He's not a hero. He's a traitor, and he should be tried for treason. So anyway, that's that news today, which I've thought about doing this too. Now, this is in Missouri, I think. Emma Winfield, I think it's Missouri. Yeah, a Missouri woman is accused of trying to scare children by approaching them with a chainsaw while wearing a ski mask. I've thought about that on occasion. I used to hold up a wiffle ball bat and say, okay, enough, knock it off, But I don't know. Evidently, the Lincoln County Sheriff's Department says parents were horrified to find out she was trying to scare some of the brats in her local neighborhood who'd been giving her trouble, and she was videotaping them when they were doing things they shouldn't do, and everybody is upset that she would do this. Obviously, the parents didn't know what she was doing, what their kids were doing, and she finally decided to take an upper hand. I'm not saying it's right, but I've thought of a chainsaw. I've thought of, sending them away to another family and saying, oh, mistake. But that's me. That's me. Anyway, she's in jail for $10,000 bond. She doesn't have an attorney. And they said that this is, they don't believe she was actually going to hurt the children. She was just trying to scare them because they were little pains in the can. And, oh my God, the moon is losing its reflective power. If your skies are clear early tomorrow morning, it might be worth your while to step outside and look for shooting stars. For a short time, maybe for an hour, quite possibly less, stargazers might be treated to a brief flurry of meteor activity. On an evening back in 1930, June 11th, 1930, 3 members of the American Meteor Society reported activity by meteors which lasted about a half hour. And they had no excuse for why they were seeing this. It's never been explained. So tonight they're hoping to have a reenactment. So look out your windows if it's not raining. I'm not holding out any hope for the East Coast because we've had nothing but rain. But anybody looking out, maybe you'll be able to see the meters. It's only going to be a half-hour show. But they said they think it's because the moon is not as bright that you could see the meteors, because on the night this happened in 1930, the moon was completely out. There was a bright moonlight, and yet you could still see the meteors. So I guess that means that maybe the moon isn't reflecting enough light to, make it bright enough not to see these meteors, and they think that's why it happened. But tonight, take a look out and see if you can. And our last crazy but news, an Ohio man, you gotta love Ohio, blames aliens for losing his car. The county sheriff in Tuscarawas says that the car might still be somewhere in Stark County after it was reported stolen by subjects not of this world. A 28-year-old man called the sheriff's office from Crosslands Marathon Station on Route 800 Northeast Magnolia at 1:36 a.m. and said he was having vehicle problems. And then when they found him, he was miles away. He had blisters on his feet, and he said aliens had taken his car. I guess it's hard to get a good Dodge up in Mars. I don't know, but that's his story, and he's sticking to it. The deputies believe he walked south on Route 800 and didn't exactly know where he was and that he lost the car. But they still think the car is out there even though it hasn't been located. So that's our crazy but news, and I hope you guys all enjoyed it because it don't get much crazier than that. Our guest is on tonight, Helen Benziger. Is that how you pronounce it?
Don't feel badly about that. I couldn't pronounce it till my father took me in the library when I was 13 and said, "Sit down." So it's Benziger. So there's no zing in Ziger.
Okay, Benziger.
Right.
Well, welcome
Benziger.
to the Lair.
Well, Mo, thank you. I'm not quite sure what I'm in for, but I'm ready to do it. I'm ready to do it.
All right.
And do you know what else?
All
Do you know what else? On the thing about the moon and everything, did you hear that on the 23rd it's supposed to be as close as it's been to the Earth in like a bazillion years, and it's going to look like it's right up in your face?
Yes.
The night of the...
Yes.
Did you hear that?
No, the night of what?
Okay. The 23rd, I believe, is what it was.
Okay. Yeah. No, I know it's coming, and we have a picture of my sister-in-law's 50th anniversary from some like 1980, and she was up in Connecticut, and she and her husband Dominic were standing up at this window, and behind them was the moon, and it was as big as the window. And it was just an incredible sight. It was actually the moon. It was so big that their bodies were in the picture of the moon. It was the greatest photo op coming and going.
Wow!
So I'm really excited about the 23rd, man. I just hope it doesn't rain.
Yeah, I'll have to find a window to stand in front of or something and go and take a picture.
Yes, everybody find a really good place to take a picture that the moon's going to be behind you guys. I'm telling you, this is going to be great. You are related to Margaret Tobin Brown, and please explain to our readers how.
Yes, guilty of that. I am her great-granddaughter. My father was her grandson. My grandmother was her daughter.
And did you meet anybody who had actually known her as a child? Did you know?
Actually, no. The funny thing is I never... our family was the kind of family in which... And I don't want to sound snooty or anything like that, but it was the part of society where you didn't talk about the famous or the infamous in your family. You did... you just didn't do it. So I actually didn't know about her till the movie came out with Debbie Reynolds.
Which one? Oh, my goodness.
The one with Debbie Reynolds back in '64. What
a way to get an education, huh?
Great.
And then it's an Irish thing.
It's an
Irish thing not to talk about family. It is.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's upper society, and it's a little... I'm Swiss as well. My dad's family came from Switzerland. Yeah, my grandmother married... Well, she was Irish Catholic, and she married a Swiss Catholic. So you may have heard of... I don't know if you've heard of Benziger Publishing. They were the okay, well, that was my other side of the family. So, so they were, it's Swiss Irish, but the best of both.
Yeah,
right.
Yes, you see, I was over in Ireland in November, and I was talking to a bus driver, and he says, so what's your family name? And he's going through Ryan, Sullivan, you know, all the common names. And I says, it's Ruane over in America, but here, he says, oh. And he looks at me, he says, well, over here we call it Ruan. He says, horse thieves and liars, the whole lot of them. And I went, probably. Probably. Don't talk to me about it.
Yes, great. I love it. I love it. That's so funny.
Yeah,
so
I says,
funny.
Oh, okay, probably, yeah. So you found out about from the picture, and somebody said, oh, by the way, we're related to her?
You know, it was during the scene where she was up on the bar, and she was kicking up her heels and throwing her skirts up over her head. And I won't say who, but someone said, I just wanted to let you know where the other side of the family came from. And, you know, and I'm going, oh, cool, I'm not adopted. Yes.
Wow, that's times when you sit there and say, wow, you know, she's on a bar and she's dressed like a Klondike. Yeah, you know, oh
there she is. Yeah.
There, wow. Now I know where I get my fashion sense from, right?
Exactly. I remember my mother when I was about 13, she looked at me and she said, well, you're just a throwback to that G.D. Molly Brown. And I said, well, thank you. And she just, she went off just infuriated her, which was great.
Because I guess if you really think about it, Margaret Tobin Brown would not have appreciated that movie so much, I think, because it did make her look like a hayseed in the beginning and even carry it over. And everything I've read, and believe me, I'm going to have a brain hemorrhage from what I've read about her, she was anything but a hayseed. Right?
She was not. Yeah, she wasn't. She was. She went to school until she was 13. She went to her aunt's. It was called a subscription school, and her aunt ran the school. And basically, it was a school where people paid to have their children go. And she was there till she was 13, which, on her level of society, was as much education as a girl could get. And a boy, too. So, and she was doing well to be in school that long. And then she had to go to work to help support the family. And everybody did that back then. They got a little bit of learning.
That wasn't unusual.
No. But anyway, she, and after that, she was just a sponge. She just wanted to devour every bit of information, every piece of art, every piece of music. And I love your choices tonight. They're going to be great. And, you know, just culture, anything she get her hands on. She was the first woman to go to Carnegie. And,
right.
Yeah.
And that's no small feat.
No, it's not. And she, you know, she was in arts and literature. So she did that. And I believe that was also 1919. If I am not mistaken.
She decided, and you know something, I hate to mix the threads, you know, and all, but did you ever read Angela's Ashes? And in Angela's Ashes, it talks about how she went to ask for help, and they closed the church door in her face, and the mother looks at the son and says, don't you ever let them shut another door in your face, ever.
Ooh,
you know?
Very cool.
And, but that's, the Irish came over here for a better life, and that's what they wanted. They wanted a better life, and they wanted the finer things in life. They wanted the indoor plumbing. They wanted to be respected when they walked on the street. They didn't want to be treated like, you know, in the East, they were making pictures of the people that came over from the famines, and all the Irish looked like monkeys, or like these... the leprechaun from those horror movies, you know. They really, Irish need not apply, you know. We weren't wanted.
Oh, exactly. exactly. And it was I think every ethnic group goes through that when they first enter a new land. And it's just a question of being able to establish yourself and be accepted. Show America that you can live here and you can survive. And that's all it takes. And I think that, and back then it's different than now. I hope I'm not going to get anybody angry, but back then, the first thing they did was learn the language. The Irish already had it, but I mean, Italians and the Spanish and Germans and Poles and everybody who came over trying to get away from Europe at the time and come over where the streets were paved with gold, or so they were told. The first thing they did was learn the language so they could assimilate into the culture.
Yes. You know what movie that always, American Tail with Fievel? I'm telling you, Fievel, I'm not bringing you to America again. When my family came over, my grandfather looked at the kiddies and said, you don't speak the Irish anymore. We were from Roscommon. And he says, you don't speak the Irish anymore. And he says, no, we're Americans now. And my uncles all went into the service, and that's how we got the citizenship for everybody, by them going into the service and all. And the Irish was never spoken again in our family, ever. And, it was, we're Americans, we speak American, we don't speak the Irish. Of course, now, it's different. We think, oh my God, I wish, I had learned it. My husband's family were German Jews. He wasn't allowed to learn any of the Yiddish or the German because of fear.
Well, if you presented yourself talking to someone in Yiddish, if it wasn't with your own group, shall I say, then you were looked upon as being a second-class citizen.
Yes, you were. Yeah. And so, she was definitely fighting that.
And I think, what they had back then is America was truly a melting pot. And everybody was thrilled to call themselves Americans. And now we've got groups. We've got African Americans, we've got Mexican Americans, we've got Italian Americans, and everybody is going back to the old country, if you will, and taking that heritage. I don't call myself a Swiss American. I don't call myself an Irish American. I'm an American. And while I appreciate what I gleaned from those cultures and what my family passed down to me, I'm still above everything else an American. And I think that's one of the problems, is we're not assimilating.
I actually think we became too diverse.
Oh, yeah. And now it's become a society where you don't even know if you can say anything anymore. And I'm not saying hurtful. I'm saying, I'm not a spokesman. I'm a speaker, right? But there are certain things that people want to attach woman and man to. And in my interpretation, and I'm older, I'm in my 60s, and in my interpretation, man stands for mankind. And I don't see the distinction between mankind and womankind. And it's just, man is the whole species, not a group. So, anyway.
So you have a lot of your great-grandmother in you anyway.
Yeah, I do. I've been accused.
Yeah. When she met her husband, she immediately started working in soup kitchens, even though they were poor.
After they got married, yes, she did.
Yeah.
Well, she didn't start working in them. she didn't start working with them in them. She started them.
Right.
Okay, yeah. And she'd go off every day.
Go ahead.
Oh, she'd go off every day with my grandmother and my great-uncle, in tow, and go to the soup kitchens and spend the day making food so the miners had, and the families of miners and their children had food. And she was not seen as the perfect company wife. Because, at some point, Jim Brown went up and became a supervisor and got a big chunk of the business, and she was down there with the workers striking during the Ludlow massacre. And it's just, Jim's up in his ivory tower, and Margaret's down there, trying to save people, and she was not a good, corporate wife, if you will.
Right.
And I think that's why. Yeah, I think that's why they ultimately separated, because Jim was a staunch Edwardian gentleman. He wanted a wife that was going to stay home, raise the kids, which she did, quite frankly, and run the house, serve the dinners at the dinner parties, and sit at the table and just smile sweetly like a good little Edwardian lady. Well, that wasn't going to happen. She was right up there talking politics with everybody, and I think that's, if you can translate that into the Molly Brown that people think of. She was very forward, she was very ahead of her time, and while all the other ladies were sitting back and, having their tea and everything, she was out campaigning, and she was out with her causes. And I don't think a lot of the women back then in Denver were really comfortable with that.
No, because a lot of them wanted the better life, and they saw the better life as the Gilded Age, where if you watch that movie Titanic with Caprio and all them, remember the site where she's watching the young girl sit at the table being, the mother is saying hold her napkin a certain way and everything. Oh, yeah. And that's what all those women wanted. They didn't want the brown skin from being outside and working. They wanted the pallor and the pale skin and to look like ladies. And that isn't exactly, so... And your husband sits there and says, okay, there's a tea tomorrow, the ladies are having a tea, you've been invited, and so you go and you give a perfect representation for your husband. A woman was there to further the husband's career. Oh,
absolutely, absolutely. And, quite frankly, Margaret had concerns of her own. She didn't really care about his career. That was his world. That wasn't her world. Her world was her causes and women's suffrage and children above everything. And after Titanic, she just went on and found other causes, and used that as a platform.
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to say we have to go to break, because that begs the question, what did he see in her to begin with? And actually, she was quite a beautiful young lady.
She was. She really was.
She had a beautiful face. When you look at some of her younger pictures, and those pictures were, they weren't as perfect as pictures are today, but still, you could see she had a beautiful face, and she would make a trophy wife.
Oh, she was. She was, I don't know if you've seen the picture in her first ball gown when she was in Denver. She was 27, and it's absolutely exquisite. And she has the most regal stance in that picture. And you will see that as she ages, that her stance is always regal with her head up, held high,
Yeah, we're going to go to break and play the first song after the commercial. The first song is W.C. Handy's St. Louis Blues. And
I love that.
As I was Yeah, when we were when they were younger, they had the money, a Victrola, the old-fashioned. This is what they would have been listening to and perhaps dancing to. She was very progressive, so I know that this would have been something she really, really liked to listen to. Let me load the commercial, and we'll be right back. This is GCR, and we're talking to Helen, who is the great-great-granddaughter of Margaret Tobin Brown, better known as Molly Brown. We'll be right back.
There's no place like home. 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 There's no place.
This is Mo inviting you to visit me at my lair. Mo Banshee's Lair Visionary Talk Radio airs every Tuesday night live on GCRinternetradio.com. Tune in at 9 p.m. Eastern Time Zone. Topics A to Z, Mo Banshee's Lair on GCR Internet Radio. We're rocking your world.
Just try to stay out of my way. Just try. I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog, too.
And welcome back. And that was W.C. Handy. And a lot of our regular listeners on this channel will remember that Stan and a few of the other DJs play Walking in Memphis. And he mentions W.C. Handy, who was considered the godfather of jazz. And I thought you guys would enjoy that because Margaret would have been listening to this. I'm going to try to open up the Skype number. If somebody wants to call in and has a question about Margaret Tobin Brown and wants to ask Helen, her great-great-granddaughter, the number is 732-707-7709. And they can ask a question, or the chat. The chat is the perfect place to ask a question, too. We were talking before we went to the break about she was very beautiful, and in very many ways, she was what Rose was in that movie, Titanic. She's a trophy wife. She's perfect. She's beautiful. And, you shine a penny up and it's a beautiful thing, And JJ was 31 and she was only 19 when they married, right?
Correct. Yeah, it was funny. My favorite story about their courtship is that, they met at a Catholic church picnic. And Jim Brown fell in love with Margaret the first time he saw her. I mean, she had this wonderful red hair, and she was slender, and she was very pretty. And, he just head over heels immediately. She, of course, was, in fact, trying to find a rich husband. She wanted a guy who had struck, silver or gold and was ready to take care of her and her family. But she met Jim, and the courtship story and how she really fell in love with him and decided to marry him even though he wasn't rich at the time. He kept after her, may I court you, may I take you out, can we do this, can we do that? And she kept saying no, because she really did want a rich man. And I think it was about the fourth time or something, she finally said, oh, all right. And that'll be it. And so he pulled up to her brother was already living in Leadville, and he pulled up in a, like a buckboard, or a carriage that wasn't really that great, and some horses, and she walked out, she looked at it, and she said, I'm sorry, I'm not getting in that. And she turned around and went back in and shut the door. So the next series of proposals to go out happened, and finally she said, all right, I will. And so this time he showed up in a black carriage with two black horses, all spiffed and polished and gorgeous. And she came out and she looked at it and she said, yes, this I can do. And then, she eventually wrote her parents and said, I know I came out here to find a rich man, but I fell in love with Jim Brown. So it really was a matter of, and they loved each other. They really did. They just couldn't live together. It's just, it was two different lifestyles. Margaret loved to travel and see things, and Jim just wanted to stay home. Very much like the movie.
Yeah, she was a dynamo, and in very many ways, you see the parallel of Rose. I thought, you would want me to come in tonight. Meanwhile she's down in third class dancing. Right. She definitely wanted the money and the prestige, but she didn't want the fine print, from what I could see.
Well, what I'm thinking is her mother wanted the prestige. I don't think she had the money. I don't think she ever did. I don't think Rose cared from day one about that. Right. And I think when she, I'm speaking of the character because I hope everybody out there realizes that they weren't real. Fictional characters, Jack and Rose. But I think the character, first of all, the guy was beating her up and hitting her. And the mother is, of course, being so supportive, saying, well, if you don't marry him and put up with this, we won't have any money. And what a great mom, you know. And,
it's a horrid movie, absolutely. But it's not that far-fetched for that.
No, it's not.
For what went on back then. And that's why I say she was beautiful. Margaret was beautiful, and she knew it, and she was going to put her good looks to work. I don't think she was thinking, well, I'll just play wife. I think she would have been a good wife to anybody, but I think she met a man who said, yeah, okay, we can do this, but you're going to be one of those wives, the perfect wife, the quiet wife, the wife that I come in and my tea is ready and my slippers and my pipe, and you'll tell me about all the charity work you did, and I'll have dinner and the kids will be in bed. And that's not how it turned out, though, right?
Well, no, it didn't. I mean, Margaret was who she was, and Jim had to either accept it or let her do what she wanted to do. And he was never going to say no to her. I mean, there's that wonderful song in the Debbie Reynolds movie, I'll Never Say No to You. And that's exactly what happened. He would never say no to Margaret. If she wanted to go to Europe, go. Have a great time. You know, be careful. I'll see you when you come home. And because she and her daughter, my grandmother, went across the pond every year for the shows, the fashion shows of Milan and Paris. And Margaret kept an apartment on the right bank in Paris, and that was her, actually Paris was her true city. She loved it more than anything. And, you know, she really, after Titanic, she never really went back to Denver. And she stayed in Newport, and then eventually she moved to New York. And, you know, it was just, Denver was, you know, everybody assumes that, you know, she lived and died there, but she really didn't. You know, it was a stopping over.
No, she didn't. Yeah, the family acquired the wealth. JJ's mining efforts, he ended up making a lot of money for the Little Johnny mine, and his employers awarded him with 12,500 shares of stock, and that made them rich. Margaret became involved with women's suffrage issues. The miners' issues, she established the Colorado chapter of the National American Women's Suffrage Association, and working in soup kitchens to help miners' families. This is a woman that she wore big elaborate hats and beautiful clothing, but still had this incredible work ethic going on her too, to make things better for others.
That was her Irish upbringing, you know, and she could have dinner with kings and princesses, and she could also have dinner with the miners and their wives and children in the camp. I mean, she, you know, she could be comfortable in any situation, and I think that's one of the things I inherited from her. Is I can go to big lavish balls and galas and meet governors and people like that, and movie stars and stuff. But you know, I'm also just really comfortable at the coffee shop with the old guys sitting around talking.
Right, you know? And you see, I've raised my daughter that way too, and my granddaughter, and I've always said, be elegant enough to not be ashamed if a prince or a king walks up to you and says, would you have this dance with me? I says, but never be so uppity that you look down at people below you either, you know? You have to have a lot of I don't know, I guess personality, and you have to have ethics, and you have to be a certain kind of person, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you don't respect and go into every single person you meet like they're going to be a good friend,
right?
You know, then you're missing so much. You know, and I don't know. It just seems that people cut themselves off from so much because they're like that.
I think that, I don't know, and I'll probably get in trouble for this too, but I think parents are shortchanging their children by not teaching them social graces. I think it's a dangerous thing.
I think that crime, and this is going to sound funny too, but I think that if you teach your child manners and respect for other people, if children are taught that in the beginning, and I was taught that to an extreme, where if an adult walked in the room, I was on my feet. If there was an adult standing, I got off the chair. After a dinner party, my sisters and I would go into the kitchen and we were always invited to parties because we were so incredibly behaved. But, if we were at someone else's house for a dinner party, we would go into the kitchen afterwards and do the dishes for the hostess. And it was just, it was respect for your elders, and until they proved that they were not due that respect.
Right.
Okay, you automatically gave it if you were younger.
It's just a shame. It's just a shame because children are going to struggle. They do not have social graces. They do not... No. They don't have respect for other people, and it's kind of like a give me, I want it, I'll take it. And it's terrible because you raise rabble when you do that. In 1894, the Browns moved to Denver, Colorado. Was the house specifically built for them?
No, it was already built. It was built in 93, I believe, by Henry Lang, who was a well-known Denver architect. And they bought it and, did some improvements to it. And it's still there today, and it's just, it is so amazing. If she walked in that house today, she'd take off her coat and just go on up to her bedroom. It's almost exactly the way it was when she was there. Because there were so many pictures. Yeah, the house fell into disrepair. It ended up, after she died, being sold. Everything sold at an estate sale, which is like criminal. But does the family have any of her personal things? Do you know, what I have is in the Titanic Museum in Branson, Missouri, and they dedicated a whole room to her, and I have loaned them everything that I had of hers and things that she had given my grandmother, that my grandmother passed on to me. And it's a gorgeous gallery. And you can go online to their website and you can see it. It's just beautiful. So, and I'll be there.
Okay, yes, tell them.
Well, I'll be at the Branson Museum on the 20th and 21st inside the museum. And so if anybody's in the area, come on down and say hi. And, what I do it's not really a living because I pick and choose and I don't do it as often as I could, but I do Last Night on Titanic dinners as fundraisers for different causes. And I speak and I conduct high teas and teach people the etiquette of high tea and the history. And, and the dinners are just wonderful because it's the menu from the last night, from the 14th, from first class. And I've only been to one that has laid out all 16 courses. Unbelievable. And each one comes with its own wine. And I love that because by the fourth course, nobody cares what I'm saying anyway. But, who cares?
Who is this broad? Why did she come here tonight?
What is she saying? But I become hysterical, people just love it. But I take them through that last night through Margaret's eyes, what she saw, what she experienced. And
did she
the
write a lot
heroism
about?
I'm sorry?
Did she write a lot about it? Did she write a lot about that? I know she wrote about social issues, but after Titanic, did she write a lot about that?
Not a lot. Not a lot. She did write a couple of articles about that night. And the Holy Grail is there's supposed to be an autobiography. Whether it's finished or not, I don't know, but nobody in the family knows where it is. So I don't know if it, if it ever really was, or if it's just a myth. Yet another myth about her. I don't know.
Right. There are a lot of myths.
But let me address one thing. When you say progressive about Margaret, you have to understand the times. She was what you would call a social democrat back then. And, if she was alive today, you wouldn't be calling her a progressive. You'd be calling her a middle-of-the-road conservative.
Right.
Because she would be all up in everybody's face about abortion. She was Catholic. And one thing she did after she wanted women to really not just have rights, but practice those rights. She
make conscious decisions.
Yeah, and she lambasted the women's movement after, a little while after Titanic, because, the only reason she got off was because she was lifted up and dropped into lifeboat number 6. Otherwise, she would have stayed and helped, because she really felt, and she told the women's movement after this, look, ladies, if you want the same rights as men, then put your big girl panties on and step up to the rail and let the younger men go with their families. Because if you're sending second-class passengers and steerage passengers off in a boat, and it's just the women and children, they are at this point poverty-stricken for the rest of their lives. Because the only thing in those days the women could do was be a seamstress, be a cook, be a maid, be a hat girl or do something like that. And it was so hard to be a single woman back then. You think it's hard now. At least now you can be a secretary and move up the line. Back then, the end of the line was being a cook or a housekeeper.
Yeah.
So it was...
And there were sweatshops, real sweatshops here, just like they say in third world countries. Well, 50 years ago, up to 50 years ago, there were still really bad workshops. And if you watch some of the stuff, there's a lot of it still going on to a degree.
Oh, Mo, it's going on right now. It's going on right now. And it's going on in this country, too. You've got illegal aliens who are being taken advantage of because they're illegal. And it's a shame. But it's been going on since day one, and it will continue.
So this house, I want to get back. This house is just incredible. It had the heat built into it. It had electric built into it and toilets built into it. It wasn't. They weren't added after it. They were built into it. And in that era, it was kind of like a really upper class house. It was a rich person's house to have indoor plumbing and all of that going on even for that time.
Definitely. Running water. What a treat.
Running water. Yes. Yeah.
And the outhouses were inside.
Yes. I got to tell you, when my husband was a little boy, the outhouse was still down in the basement in New Jersey in the Coldwater Flats. You went down into the basement to go to the loo.
Well, okay.
And in Ireland, they still have outhouses.
Well, let me tell you, when we first moved here, and I live in the mountains in Wyoming, and I moved from a 3,000 square foot, 5-bedroom, 3-bath, every buzzer and bell you could want, into an 800 square feet log cabin built at the turn of the last century with no central heat. And guess what? We have an outhouse. We have indoor plumbing too, but when we first got there, the whole roof had to be taken off. It was falling in, and we had a full summer of construction. And guess what we used? You betcha. Everybody used the outhouse for about 2.5 months. So there you go. Me and Maggie, right? Me and Margaret.
It always goes around. It just, that's the truth. It really is. I remember standing on the cliffs of Moher and saying, well, Mom, we're here, Yeah. My mom has passed away some years ago, but I was, I could feel her with me, and I'm saying, well, we're here, we're back, and there was a big, beautiful rainbow right above me, and I says, and God is shining on us, so everything is good. They still, when you ride around in Ireland and look at some of those shacks, it's like, holy good God.
Yeah, how did they do that? Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't want to come back here and live, but we went when the hurricane had hit, and we had this planned for months and months, and then 5 days into it, they said, well, the planes are running, and since we had no electric, no heat, no water, no nothing, and we weren't about to get it back for 13 days, I says, well, we're going to Ireland. So my cousin says, you only came here because we've got electric and water. I says, and you got a toilet. That's a big deal.
Not to mention the toilet, Yeah, that's great. That is so funny.
Then we were asked to take showers, and we did.
Oh.
Please take a shower right now.
No, we had. We went over to my sister's and took showers, but everything else, it was.
It's rough.
If it's
tiring.
2:00 in the morning, you had to go. You're outside with a flashlight.
Yeah, it is. It's a but it gives you an appreciation of what they went through back in the day. And what she went through, and then what she went to become. They had 2 children, right? A boy and a girl, right?
Yes, they had Lawrence Palmer and Margaret.
Mm-hmm. And
and Helen.
Okay.
Yeah, my grandmother was Helen, so they had Lawrence and Helen. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay. And did they travel with her? Did she stay there until they got out of school? How did it work with them in school and her starting to travel? How did that all come about?
Lawrence was already out of school, and he was in college. Mm-hmm. He went to Colorado School of the Mines in Golden, and Helen was at the Sorbonne in Paris. Yeah. And so Margaret would travel across the pond to see Helen, because she was there for many years. And actually, she and Margaret were traveling with the Astors when they had to get on Titanic. And they were both...
Yeah, it wasn't planned.
The Titanic was not planned. Absolutely not.
Right.
It was... And it wasn't for J.J. and Madeline Astor either. What happened was Madeline, his little 19-year-old wife, became pregnant, and they had to get back to the doctors in New York. So, and at the same time, Margaret got a telegram saying that her first grandson, Lawrence, in Kansas City, was ill. And she'd never seen him, so she decided she better get back, as quickly as possible. And it turned out it was just a milk allergy. There was nothing wrong. But, but they both got on and, were there together. Because they were really good friends. Margaret and Helen, Margaret and J.J. Astor had been friends for quite a while. And my grandmother and Madeline knew each other because they were about the same age. And circles were very small back then.
Right.
But anyway, she... what was I going to say? Margaret was one of the few people who didn't ostracize Madeline and Astor.
Right.
They were just kind of like, whatever. It's not my life, it's yours, and I've liked you before, I'm going to like you still. And, and Helen and Madeline got along great. And, it was just, I think...
he ended up divorcing his wife. The girl was 19, and they married because she was pregnant, and they got out of Dodge for a while, and they came back, something like that.
Actually, they were on their honeymoon when they found out she was pregnant.
Ah, okay.
So he didn't marry her because she was pregnant. He married her because he loved her.
Okay.
And then they found out when they were all in Egypt that she was pregnant. And they booked Titanic. And then when Margaret got the telegram, they just said, well, come back with us on Titanic. And she said, okie dokie. And the fact that Captain Smith...
That I don't get. The Egypt, going to Egypt, even back then, it's hot, it's dusty,
Mo, have you seen the biography? Have you seen the biography by Christian Iverson?
No.
Okay. So it's like $12 on Amazon. It's called Molly Brown Unraveling the Myth. And it is the first book that the family's ever endorsed.
Weighed in on.
So, we all contributed to it. And because the family never talked before Kristen approached us. But anyway, if you look in there, there's a picture, my favorite picture, of Margaret and my grandmother, Helen, sitting on top of camels in front of the pyramids and the Sphinx. And the outfits just, April in Egypt, and you've got these heavy, heavy clothes. It's just the most amazing picture in the world. Just, you don't know how they could do it.
The clothing, number one of the big, during the 1800s at the turn of the century, one of the big problems for women was whale bones cracking in their,
I know.
what do you call it? Their, whatever
their
they are,
cage.
girdles, whatever, yeah. And they would pierce the girls and end up, dying.
They break a few ribs. They break a few ribs.
That was a rough thing with girls. And it didn't matter if you were in a hot climate, you still had to wear that crap. Because you had to have the tiny waist, and you had to have the bustier on your can to make it look like you had a big rear end, and you had to have 5 different petticoats under it, and then not to mention you had to have the stockings, and then the boots up over your ankle, the shoes over your ankles. These girls, corsets would like fall down from heat exhaustion, and that's why during the middle of the day they would take it all off and during the hottest part of the day and just relax, because otherwise they drop dead.
Everybody went to their rooms or their cabins on the ship and just took everything off, and just and breathed. You could hardly breathe in those things. And if you look at there's a picture in that book, and a well-known picture of Margaret giving Captain Rostrum of the Carpathia his loving cup. Look at her waist. Oh, my gosh. She was on a diet anyway, but, the waist is just too frightening. Too frightening. Yeah. I'm so glad we got out of that. Oh, I can't even imagine. I think the last time
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go.
I think that one of the things that is a good thing was that we got out of that mentality with the tiny waist and the layers and layers of clothing. Now I'm afraid we've gone too far, because half the girls that are 12 years old, everything is hanging out, your rear end's hanging out, and it's, wow. We've gone from one extreme to another in 100 years, and it's scary. We have to go to break, because if I don't, I'm going to blow through it. And the song is Meditation. This came out in, let me check my thing here, 1919, when she ran for the Senate. And so this would have been one of the big songs for the next few years, and it happens to be one that I absolutely love. So I hope you're all going to love it too.
Jurassic Park.
Well, hello there. This is Stan, inviting you to listen to Jurassic Park, where we dig up the old bones of rock and roll, 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond, and then carefully rebury them. Thursday nights, 8 Eastern, on GCR.
I hope you guys all enjoyed that piece because it was meditation, which was a brought out right then around 1919, and I'm sure that it was a huge success and that Margaret would have loved listening to it. We're talking about Margaret Brown. When did she and her husband, they ended up separating, but they didn't divorce.
They were both Irish Catholic.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I truly believe they loved each other till the end. They just, as I said, they couldn't live together. Two different types of people, and just wasn't going to work out. But they loved each other till the end. His comment when he found out.
Go ahead.
When he found out that she had been on Titanic, because nobody knew she was on it except my grandmother. And when he found out she survived, he said, "Well, she's too mean to sink." It was funny. She's too mean to sink. I knew she
when
did.
he died in 1922, she told newspapers, "I never met a finer, bigger, more worthwhile man than J.J. Brown."
Absolutely.
And there was a story that was thrown around that he was so rich she would burn his money, but that was just a silly mistake, right?
Where that came from a book that a gentleman named Gene Fowler wrote, and it was called Timberline. And in it, they had her coming down. Well, they had her mother dying of just a broken heart because she had birthed such an unnatural child. And after her mother died, her father put her in a basket and sent her down the Colorado River when she was found by a drunken Irishman named Seamus, who raised her on the milk of the nanny goat. And what is true out of that was she was born. Okay?
Right, yeah.
But that little piece that he wrote was the basis for the movie The Unsinkable Molly Brown and the play, which came first, actually. And but the money, that came from the movie and the play, where they had her, after they got married, he came back after a long drunk and went down to the river to the creek to wash off. And so he had sold the mine and had $300,000. And he gave it to Margaret and said, "Do whatever you want with it. It's yours. It's my wedding present to you." And so while he was at the creek, she got all paranoid, thinking someone was going to come rob her, and she put it in the stove after much, aggravation of trying to figure out where to hide it. So she puts it in the stove, and then the story is that Jim Brown comes back and lights the fire so he can warm his backside. And she burned up $300,000 in the stove. And here's the truth: there was no paper money in Leadville then, and it was all silver, And so she probably, if any part of that was true, she would have probably melted $75 worth of silver.
And
but that's
just where unmelted again.
Yeah, and that's where the story came from.
Right.
Which is really
she was
weird.
She was they ended up separating, and she got quite a nice settlement, $238,000, which is like $3 million today. And
yeah, it was a lot of bucks.
A lot. Yeah, she did all right, and her children received the rest, and she did mostly traveling after Titanic and after separating from her husband, and there's stories that she tried to try her hand at the stage.
Oh, she did. She studied acting in Paris, studying the Sarah Bernhardt method, and she acted on French stages, American stages, all over Europe. She also was, you probably don't know this, she was also known as the Rocky Mountain Warbler. After my grandmother married...
Not know that.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, after my grandmother married my grandfather, Margaret spent time at their Schloss in Switzerland, and she heard a yodeler, and she was just absolutely enthralled with this type of singing, and so she studied for many years, and she yodeled in parlors from Russia to Denver and beyond.
Wow.
I mean, she was so proud of that skill, and she would do it whenever anybody would, bring it up. And she'd go, "Oh, let me show you," And
yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
She ended up getting the Legion of Honor from France too, right? For her philanthropic stuff.
Well, what she did was at a time when, now, first of all, I think after Titanic, the fact that she even stepped foot on another ship was remarkable. Geez, how do you do that again? And she was on 2 other ships that were struck, or had trouble and had to limp home. Nothing sank, but she still had 2 more scares.
I didn't know. Was Carnival in business back then, too? Oh, wow.
Oh, jeez. I know. That's such a joke. Anyway, not for the people on the ships, but my gosh. I mean, it just kept happening and happening. But anyway, at a time when German U-boats were sinking Allied ships at an alarming rate, Margaret took private donated monies, bought ambulances, and put them on ships and took them across almost the same route the Titanic took, and took them over to France for the war effort, because France was kind of her love. And she had books shipped over that were written in Braille, because the weapon of choice at that point was mustard gas, which left the soldiers blind. And she brought people in who could train the soldiers how to read Braille. And she put on it. I mean, she was the Bob Hope of World War I. She would put on shows everywhere, for the troops and for the guys in the hospital and everything like that. She brought actors in and acts and things like that. And so, she was like Bob Hope back then. And so they, for her bravery.
Go ahead.
For her bravery, taking these ships back and forth across, these shipping lanes where the Germans were sinking them, every other ship, she received the French Legion of Honor. Unfortunately, it was posthumously.
Right. Claude Rains, the actor who played the Invisible Man and so many great movies. A lot of people are not aware that cast eye he had was from World War I, where he and Basil Rathbone and a few others were in a mustard gas explosion, and he was almost completely blinded. He was legally blind in the one eye. That's why it always looked off to the side. When we look at what's happening now, it's terrible. But when you think of the carnage back in World War I and World War II, war is hell. It is not a joke. And she stepped up to the plate so many times in her lifetime, and I don't think I have read anything where anybody said she did it to stand out or to make a big deal of herself. She never once did that.
Absolutely not. She was in it. I mean, I think that's what I'm most proud of her, is that her ability to just know what needs to be done, do it, and not expect anything in return. And she had a true compassion for people. And no, she never expected anything. She didn't want, I think there was a comment that she telegrammed to my grandmother that said something about if I should be in a mental hospital, it's just because of all these people telling me I'm the heroine of Titanic. You know, she didn't do that. I mean, do you realize that she was the last person to get off of the Carpathia? She stayed on board until every single passenger and crew member from Titanic had a place to go, was hooked up with their embassy, had money in their pocket, you know, was met by a relative or whatever, but she didn't leave Carpathia until everybody else was taken care of. And then she went over to she kept a suite at the Ritz, and she went over there and set up she called it her war room. And she immediately went out and went to the stock exchange, and before she left there, she had $20,000 in her pocket for the survivors. Wow. And she was head of the Survivors Fund for years and years and years. And even on the Carpathia, she got everybody in the first-class lounge, all of the first-class passengers, and she had a board set up. And on one side, it had the names of all the people that had given to the Survivors Fund. Okay. And on the other side, it was blank. And she said, I applaud all of you who were, you know, basically there. And basically, it was step up. You know, and Madeline Astor was the first one, and she gave $2,000, which was a tremendous sum back then.
Yes, and she had lost her husband.
She had lost her husband, right. The first smokestack took him out. When it fell, he was underneath it. And walking his Airedale kitty on deck, waiting for the end. I know, just breaks your heart. But, so anyway, by the time they reached New York, she had raised $10,000. And she continued doing this time after time after time to, she got the White Star Line to pay these people to get home, because the White Star Line was saying, okay, the minute it went down, you're out of a job. And you owe, by the way, you owe us for your uniforms that you lost at sea. Mm-hmm. And no, your family will not be paid, you know, for the time you were, you know, because you didn't complete your voyage. And so Margaret really got on their butts about that. And everybody was compensated. Everybody, you know, was taken care of. She's the one who was on the committee that passed maritime law that said that you have to have enough lifeboats for passengers and crew aboard every ship. So, you know, she just kept going and kept going and kept going. And it was never for personal gain.
Right. Did your family, do you know if she kept close ties with survivors after that? You know?
Yes. She was the president of the survivors what was it called? Survivor Committee. And that was formed on board the Carpathia. And she was voted president. And, yeah, she kept in touch with survivors. And the people on the committee were all survivors. And so, yeah, I mean, it was a very elite group. You know, there just weren't that many. But the amazing thing is out of those 705 people or 4, I can't remember. But anyway, out of those people, there are so many descendants that I meet. It's amazing. The 100th anniversary, I went to the Titanic Museum in Pigeon Forge, and the John Jocelyn and Mary Kellogg Jocelyn are the owners. And they decided to do something amazing for the 100th. So both in Branson and Pigeon Forge, they gathered descendants of passengers and crew. And it was so weird. I was the last one to come in. Everybody was waiting in this room, all the descendants, to go out and make the entrance. I mean, it was like a Broadway production. It was unbelievable. But I walked in, and I opened the door, and there was a very long hallway of descendants of passengers and crew, and I opened the door, and everybody looked at me. You know, who's coming in next? And it was, my God, it was like seeing those people. You know, their eyes just looked at me, and I was, oh my God, I'm back on Titanic, you know, and because it was just all family, but the feeling of seeing those people look at me was like I was looking into the face of Titanic.
Oh my God!
And it was just
I can't even imagine.
So bizarre. Oh, it was chilling. It was chilling.
You're going to be in the Branson Museum on the 20th and 21st of this month?
Of this month, yeah. I'm actually leaving tomorrow morning to start the trek back. I'm going to drive this time, but yeah. So I'll be there the 20th and the 21st, and I'll be there from about 9 to 5 both days.
Have you been to the Dublin Titanic exposition yet? Expo?
I hate to tell you, I've never been to Ireland. It breaks my heart.
It hasn't been opened long. It hasn't been open long. They opened it, I think, last year in 2012. But it is an amazing museum, and they take you in like a bucket ride, and you go through and you see how they built it and all. And if you ever get there, that's quite amazing to see that. I mean, that's where she was built. You know, it's not where all the passengers got on, but it's where she was built in Dublin, and the White Star, you know, and Harland and Wolff shipyards and all. Right. But if you ever can get there, just don't do a bus trip, and don't go to a gin mill called Gaynors. Don't do that, because there's some dirty old man that'll have a grope on you. You don't want to be doing that.
I love it. I love it. That's too funny.
How was her relationship with the kiddies after the divorce? All right? Everybody good with this?
No, it wasn't. It was very strained after, well, they never divorced, but after his death.
Separated, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Margaret thought she should have had more of the estate. And so she and both kids went to court. And it wasn't lovely. And you know, I think she died a very lonely woman, and she, you know, she, oh gosh, I mean, there was a point when Uncle Jim, who was her eldest grandson from my grandmother, said that he remembered going to see her his grandfather's grave with my grandmother. And there was, went to see their grandfather's grave, which was Jim Brown, okay? I'm sorry, my voice is going. But
that's okay.
Went to see the grave.
I'm going to let you go in a little bit.
Okay, but they went to see the grave, which is on Long Island, in the Benziger family plot. And he remembers his mother, my grandmother, showing him a woman that was standing under a tree. And she said, "Do you see that woman over there, James?" And he said, "Yes." And he couldn't have been more than, 7, 8 years old. And she said, "That's your grandmother." And they weren't even speaking, and how sad.
Yeah.
And my grandmother ended her life in living with my Uncle Jim. But, it was a very sad ending. Money does that to people, which is just really a shame.
Yeah, it is. It's, and when it all goes back to it, she wanted a rich husband, and he wanted a trophy wife, and at first it looked like the perfect match, and then, of course, the shit hits the fan, and you've got a woman who's, I'll be your trophy wife, but I'm going to do what I want to do, and then it all just kind of, goes out of the way. And I know how that is a little bit, my husband's a little bit older than me, and so it's kind of like dragging him, yes, we have to do this, and, well, why do we have to do this? Why can't we just stay home, And I'll say, because you're 82, but I'm not 82. That's why we're not staying home tonight. Really, let's get on the page, Guy. we're going to go to break, and then I'm going to bring Helen back, and she can tell you again where she's going to be in Branson and the name of the museum and everything, and we'll let her go before she loses her voice completely. And the last song is going to be Marion Harris singing "Who's Sorry Now," which was in 1923. And it's an actual recording of her, so you're going to hear all the cracks and, you know, the little hairline noise from the recording. And then we're going to come back and let our guest go. So I hope everybody enjoys this.
You smiled when we parted, it hurt me somehow. I thought there was nothing worthwhile. The tables are turning and you're crying now, while I am just learning to smile. Sorry now, sorry now, whose heart is aching for breaking each vow, who's sad and blue, who's crying too, just like I cried over you. Right through the end, just like a friend, I tried to warn you somehow. You had your way, now you must stay. I'm glad that you're sorry now. You will never know the pain you brought to me when I realized that it was not to be. For each hour of gladness that I spent with you, there were days of sadness when you proved untrue. Every single word you told me I believed. You knew love was blind, and that's why you deceived. How you took advantage of my faith and trust. All my tender hopes you trampled in the dust. Now that it's all over, I'm so glad we're through. I'm the one who's happy, you're the one who's blue. You will count the hours spent in vain regret while your heart is breaking, trying to forget. Now you know it doesn't pay to play with fate. You have learned your lesson just a bit too late. I'm glad that you're sorry now.
Tired of people complaining that you play your music too loud?
Hey, turn it down, you freaking
Well,
punks.
turn up the volume and rip that sucker's knob off so you don't have to hear them bitch. GameCon Radio.
And welcome back to Mo Banshee's Lair on GCR. And our guest is Helen Benziger. I'm not going to say it right. I screwed it up again.
Too funny,
sorry. I'm so
Benziger.
sorry. And we were just talking about politics and raising children, and I don't know what happened. The hippies were supposed to fix all this crap.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that amazing? I was, and I was a true hippie when I was, but you know what? I was a conservative hippie. You know, I was the only hippie that voted for Nixon, let me tell you. But
I know, I did
you
too.
know, it's too much. But you know, I enjoyed the hippie lifestyle. It was great fun, and I dabbled in it for a while, and then I got tired of it and went on to something else. So, you know, and I don't know.
I wasn't a hippie, and I was called the Hawk. And, you know, oh my God, they had, you know, I'd go out and there'd be somebody painting some kind of hawk with blood on its talons and stuff, and I was cool with it, you know. Somebody's got to do it, you know. But the thing is, children today are almost like Lord of the Flies.
Oh, I know.
It's like, just
awful.
take it.
And I have to tell you, I'm a great authority on children because I've had none. So, you know, so I can tell you how to raise your child. I can tell you how to raise your child.
I don't know how you pulled
authority.
that off, but God bless you. God bless you. I had 3, and we had 2 teenagers, and then we went brain dead and had another one. and we're still trying to figure out what the hell we were thinking, you know. And he wasn't a bad kid or anything, but I look at the other kids that are out there, and it's like watching an episode of The Walking Dead. It's take it, and if I want something, I'm going to take it from you. I'm going to steal your iPod. What the heck happened?
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't. Well, yes, I do. Yes, I do. My generation had children, and they wanted to raise them in a free and open kind of environment, so they weren't stifled like I was and like you were, right?
Yeah.
And then what happened is those kids grew up and had children, and they wanted to be their friends. They wanted their children to be their friends. Yeah. How do you raise a child if you're their best friend? It can't be done.
No.
They're like, I mean, I didn't have children, but I've had dogs my whole life, and you cannot treat a dog like, you know,
like
he's your best friend.
Yeah.
You know, you have to establish the alpha in the house, and they have to know that you're the boss, and what you say goes. Because if they think they can control you, you're dead in the water.
Yeah.
You're dead in the water.
And that's exactly what's going on now.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, and I can say that because I've never had them.
Well, I've had them, and I've raised a lot of children, and I've stepped in, and I've, you know, there's this actor, and I'm not going to say his name, but he credits the fact that he was an alcoholic by the time he was 18 because his father was a director of some sort, and his father would have parties and let the kid smoke pot. He would let him have prostitutes when he was 12 years old, and you know, and you thought that this wasn't going to have an adverse effect on this kid. You know, no wonder
but look,
he was a drug addict, in and out of drug stuff.
Okay, but here's the scoop, and I really truly believe this. There is a point, and I mean, my childhood is a series of 10 shows, okay, to just scratch the surface as to what happened in my childhood. But at some point, you have to take responsibility. You have to step up, and you have to be responsible for your own behavior and quit blaming anyone else.
Right.
You have free will. God gave you free will. Use it. If you don't like where you are, move.
Change it.
You know, change your position.
Make it better.
Change your attitude. Change your surroundings. Change the way you deal with other people. Change the way you deal with yourself, most importantly. You know, so you just... No. I mean,
they're saying in the chat, electric fences. Put the kids in electric fences. Come back in 20 years.
I love it.
Yeah,
let's put
the kids in an electric fence. We'll come back in 20 years, and if they know how to not pee over it, then we're good. We're okay. We did it. No, you're right. I always felt that what had happened was we went from World War I right to World War II, right to Korea, right to Vietnam. And they were long engagements. And a lot of men died. A lot of women ended up raising children by themselves and said, I don't want my little boy to end up serving in the military. I don't want my little boy to have to do this, that, and the next thing. And they raised a bunch of wusses.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when Brokaw said it was the greatest generation, he was not, I mean, that's the truth.
Yeah. He's not joking.
That's absolutely the truth.
Yeah, they gave up their childhoods too.
Yeah, I mean, and if you look today, or if you look at World War II, how many actors were in the service? You know, my grandfather got his general's star the same day Jimmy Stewart did. You know, they both got their brigadier the same day, and you know, and there was John Wayne was in the service, right? Jimmy Stewart.
Oh God!
You know,
the one from Gone with the Wind, Ashley, the blonde.
Yes. Oh, what was his name? Oh shoot.
Yeah, I can't think of his name.
Yeah, but, well, everybody can see him though.
He was 50 years old. He was a pilot. He went back into the service and was shot down by German MiGs. You know, I mean, these men still stepped up to the plate. And now we've got people that
name one
I
actor
think if you went into your
in the service.
None of them do. None of them do. Even the ones that are Mel Gibson. He was in that one where he for the Vietnam one. He was never in the service, but he comes off like this big hero because he made a service movie. Excuse me?
Yeah, I know.
You know, it's really sad. You know, they're all playing soldier, but not one of them ever served in the military, and it's really sad. We just lost Charles Dornay, who was a decorated soldier, went back like 3 times. My own brother-in-law, he lied about his age, was at Normandy, was blown off transports 4 times before they finally took him and threw him on a ship and told them not to let him off because he was only like 16 years old.
Oh my gosh.
And you know,
and so many kids did that.
Yes,
but
a lot of them did.
Nobody does that today.
Yeah.
I mean, the ones you've got in service today are the real heroes.
Yeah, they are. You know, these kids that are out there, yeah, you hear bad stories about some of them that kind of go over the edge and stuff. But these kids, you know, when you stand there and say, it's your job, you keep it over there, we don't want it over here, that's what they're doing. They're keeping it over there so it doesn't come here. And that's what upsets me when people say, oh, they're murderers. Well, would you rather it all come over here and have your kids killed?
Yeah. Yeah.
Please explain to me how this works. If we don't keep it over there and make those countries accountable for terrorists that are in their country attacking us, they're going to come over here and do it anyway. So why don't we just keep it there?
I think the whole thing is that most of the country now is just apathetic. They don't care.
Yes.
They
think it'll go away.
The spirit of patriotism in this country is at an all-time low.
Yes.
And you know what? If you lose it, you don't get it back.
No.
There's no way.
And I'm like Cohan. I'm a red, white, and blue girl.
Amen.
You know?
Amen, sweetheart.
It's the best damn country in the world, and if people don't believe it, go someplace else. Go someplace else and see what would happen. Because you couldn't get up in front of a lot of these countries, you couldn't get up and start cursing out their president. I mean, if you don't like the policies,
either can we.
I got that. Yeah, but I got that. You don't like the policies, but you have to respect that president, because if we do not show respect, no one else will. And I don't think Americans understand that anymore.
No, they don't, but I could get into this for hours.
Yeah, me too.
But,
you're going to be in Branson. What's the name of the museum?
It's the Titanic museum attraction, and they've actually built the ship to half size, and it's right on the main strip in Branson, and the exhibits inside are phenomenal. And there's a room that's devoted to my great-grandmother. That's the first time they've ever done a whole exhibit around one person. And it just, it's an amazing experience to bring the family. Everybody loves it, and I'm amazed at how many kids know so much about the ship. And they'll tell me things. I've learned so much from 8-year-olds. I cannot tell you.
Right.
The amount of knowledge they have about this. And these are kids who have never seen the movie. They just, have this fascination with the ship itself. And I just love it. I love it. But,
I asked
I'll be there
you earlier. Go ahead. You'll be there on the 20th.
I'll just be there on the 20th and the 21st, yeah.
Okay. And I asked you if you've probably seen all the movies. Do you have an actress that you think maybe was one of the better Margaret Browns?
No.
No? You don't think any of them actually caught her?
Well, no, because everybody's playing Molly.
Right.
Everybody's playing the Unsinkable Molly Brown. Nobody's playing Margaret, and not to drop names, but when Jim Cameron asked me, what I thought of Kathy Bates' performance, I just looked at him and I said, look, if I had that much money in a movie, I'd probably go for the woman everybody could recognize rather than take a chance on presenting a Margaret Brown that nobody knew. But at this point, I'm totally convinced that the only one who's going to be able to play her correctly is me.
Right.
So
there you go. Get somebody to make a movie, man.
Yeah. I mean, Jim had all the information right in front of him. He knew who the real Margaret was, but he chose to go with Molly, and I don't really blame him. And I'll tell you the truth very quickly is that a lot of my family, did not like the play, did not like the movie.
Right.
My grandmother would not go see it. She thought it was just the most horrendous thing in the world because that was not the mother that she remembered.
Right.
And but I love the movie and I love the play, The Unsinkable Molly Brown, because that is what kept everybody's interest in her. She captured the American heart, and they all loved her spunk, and they all loved her, her moxie. And I will tell you that everything in that movie and that play were her. It captured her spirit, and it captured her heart. And until my generation talked, and now the information is out there about the real Margaret, and they love her even more because it's an even more amazing story.
Right. It is.
So
the more I read about her, the more I thought, she has been so underrated. It's just terrible. She's been so underrated.
Oh, yeah. But, that's what I do, though. I go around and I try and tell the real story. And, people embrace her even more when they know the real one. So it's really gratifying for me. And, I'm just trying to get my youngest nephew to carry on, so that we have the story continue.
The legacy, right, yeah.
Yeah.
It's an important story that has to be heard because in 100 years, you don't want people looking at, the wrong information and getting the wrong idea again. I want to thank you so much for coming on this show. This was awesome, and you are a fabulous guest. It was fun. It was great fun. And maybe you'll come back on again when you've got something new going on. Please, and let me know when you've got stuff going on. And maybe we'll have a show just about politics, and we'll just roast everybody in hell.
Can we really be politically incorrect?
Oh, yes. I am known for that.
I am so bad at being politically correct. It's just, gosh, I just can't do it. Anyway, okay, yes. Sweetheart, it was
thank you so much for coming on.
To you later. Okay.
Yep. God bless you. Be safe.
You too. Bye-bye, hon.
Okay. Bye-bye. That was just awesome. And I am over the moon that we had that show. And I want to thank her for coming on. And I did put her Facebook, and the Facebook is www.facebook.com/unsinkable.brown. And you can find it if you just Google the Unsinkable Molly Brown, you're going to find it. There is a book out, Molly Brown, Unraveling the Myth by Kristen Iverson. It's on Amazon. You can buy it. It's a paperback. I don't know if it's on Kindle too, but it's on there. It's supposed to be the only one that the family actually approved of, so and had some input on. So I hope you guys really enjoyed it, and look up some pictures of Molly Tobin Brown, because she was quite a beautiful young lady, and I'm so glad we got to talk about the real lady, and I hope you guys all love the music. I'm going to play one other song that was really huge in her later years, and it was Bolero. Bolero was a dance, and it was formed in the South American countries and the like, and it became very famous. And if anybody remembers, many years ago, maybe 20 years ago, a skating couple used it at the for the Olympics, and they won it and were actually asked to come back a year later and perform it again. Bolero is an amazing song, and I've got that. And it's another song that I'm sure she would have loved, because the romanticism, the traveling, she loved all things very worldly and exotic, and I'm sure she listened to this. And next week we'll be back, and we're going to have a Captain Retired. David Brown is going to come back. We're going to be talking about the Civil War from his grandfather's view. His grandfather fought in the Civil War. He had a bullet in his leg that the family still has. I don't know if it's grandfather, great-grandfather, but I know David's always fun to have on, and I'm sure you guys are going to love him. And then after that, we have an author who has written a book called Grave Diggers. He's going to be on. So we got some great shows coming up. Please remember, animals need water. Children, animals do not belong in cars when you're not there. And if you see an animal in trouble, please report it. And, be safe out there. Watch your kitties around water. And with that, I'm going to say good night. I'm going to play Bolero and then exit. God bless you all. I love you all, and good night.